Welcome back to another segment of License to Legacy. I'm host Javi Trujillo, and joining me once again is Mr. David Leigh from the James Bond dossier. How do you do, David?
I am doing very well, Javi. How are you?
I'm doing well. And of course, we have Bill Koenig of the Spy Command is here also. How are you today, Bill?
I'm hanging in there, Javi.
Is it getting cold where you're at?
It's quite cold. There's 6 inches of snow on the ground.
I've got none of that here in Texas. So what about you, David? How's Spain weather like?
Well, here on the Costa Brava, it's a bit nippy. We do have temperatures of -1 degree Celsius overnight, but it's no snow so far. And snow's unlikely.
Well, with that out of the way, let's get down to business, shall we? We are here to talk about the 10th anniversary of SPECTRE, which, I don't know, it feels a little weird to talk about the legacy of a movie that's only 10 years old, especially as it only has one film that came after it. But I think we have some interesting topics of discussion ahead of us, so we'll see where the road takes us. Now, SPECTRE opened on November 6, 2015 in the United States, following its UK premiere on 26th October. It had a US box office of $200 million and $879 million worldwide. So going by the numbers.com, Skyfall made $304 million US unadjusted and over $1.1 billion worldwide. Now, to put it into context, Spectre's budget was $45 million more than Skyfall's, so 200 versus 245 million. And another interesting comparison is with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which released July 31st of the same year as Spectre. Now, that only reached 195 million US and 688 million worldwide, leaving Bond still on top. I know in the fandom there tends to be a lot of comparison between the two franchises. Those are probably the two main spy ones. But at least at this moment in time, Bond was still number one, even though Mission Impossible has had quite a few more films since Spectre.
Well, there was also something peculiar about Spectre in the US because Skyfall was in theaters for 90 days. Spectre was in theaters for 150. It was still in theaters after it had already gone to home video. And, you know, it was like going week to week toward the end. It was like barely advancing. Then when it finally hit 200 million, it was out of theaters.
Is when it left.
Yeah. And I have speculated, and it's only that somebody at Sony, you know, promised somebody we'll get 200 million. And then, like, you know, and it's like they even had like 2-for-1 showings in the latter part of Spectre's theatrical release. So there was something going on. You know, it's in theaters for, you know, a lot more days, considerably less money. Well, $104 million less.
Yeah.
So make of that what you will. But it was very peculiar at the time.
And, you know, unadjusted, Spectre is the number 2 movie in the franchise worldwide, you know, just behind Skyfall. But if you adjust it for inflation and just looking at a few movies, like Spectre is well behind Thunderball, Goldfinger, Skyfall, Moonraker. So it's interesting when you look at it, like this is the second highest grossing Daniel Craig, the second unadjusted factor. And there's other factors too, like theater count, streaming, all that stuff. But if you look at it from one perspective, it's very popular, and another, maybe not as much. When did you first see it?
I saw it opening weekend. Whether it was Thursday night or Friday, I don't remember. But I definitely saw it opening weekend, and I saw it at least twice more in the theater.
I was lucky enough to attend the premiere at the Royal Albert Hall. Well, if you consider it lucky to see any film at the Royal Albert Hall. And I really loved it, actually, seeing it. And so much so that the next morning I went to Leicester Square in London and I saw it again on IMAX.
Nice. Ours was a Thursday night preview screening, so like 10 o'clock on November 5th. Got all dressed up, saw it at IMAX, which the Texas State History Museum has a theater, the Bob Bullock, and it's the largest IMAX screen in Texas. So the problem with that is you go to that movie theater, see a movie in IMAX, then you go to one of the chains like Regal or Cinemark, and then you see their IMAX, and you're like, this isn't the same thing. Like there's definitely a sense of grandeur that comes from the Bob Bullock screen. But Skyfall, Spectre, No Time to Die, we saw all at that theater for the first time, and it's just getting that opening scene of Bond walking down Mexico in that Steadicam shot, like seeing it in IMAX was impressive. David, how often do you rewatch this one?
I used to watch it quite a bit between it coming out and prior to No Time to Die. I mean, really, I don't seem to ever have time to watch Bond films at the moment. I've been dying to watch Thunderbolt ever since we were talking about it for the 60th anniversary edition, and I still haven't managed to do that. So, how often do I watch any Bond film? Not very often. Spectre, do you know, I do quite like it. I think it's a much better film than Skyfall, and I ranked all the Daniel Craig films this year, and I think I put it in second place behind Casino Royale. So it does get my attention. It does get some love from me. So I do watch it relatively frequently, I would say.
Bill, how about you? How often do you rewatch it, and where do you rank it? Either in the general 25 or in Daniel Craig's tenure?
Well, I haven't seen it recently. Like David, I probably watched it more in that gap between Spectre and No Time to Die, and just haven't been motivated to watch it more recently. Let's see. I give it mixed marks. I really liked the first hour or so. I've said this before. They were like threading the needle between a traditional Bond film and a Daniel Craig Bond film. There is a little more humor. That scene right after the main titles where Bond's getting into it with M, and, you know, it was nice humor without going over the top. The humor was, somewhat in character. But I think the wheels fell apart after they get to what I've referred to as the Spectre call center out in the middle of the desert. And we'll get into the Sony hacks, but the Sony hacks turned out to be quite accurate. Yes, they were definitely having trouble trying to figure out how to end the movie. So, I'll just give it mixed marks. And boy, definitely not as good as Casino Royale. A little more humor than in Skyfall, but when a movie starts out strong and then kind of collapses at the end, that kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So I remember when I did a review for the Spy Command blog, I think I gave it a B- overall, but it's like where I really like that first part, but the second part wasn't doing it for me. So
I just recently, like at work, I'll take a break and walk on the treadmill for like 10 minutes at a time. And so I've seen it a lot that way. Just recently, I think it was around maybe 3 weeks ago, I started watching it, and then I went straight into No Time to Die. And No Time to Die always falls apart for me once Staffan's henchmen go after Bond and his family. Like, I don't know, there's something about that chase just bores me, and I check out at that point. But having said that, like, I feel like I watch it fairly frequently, but in terms of like Daniel Craig movies, like this is kind of the bottom for me. Not to say that I dislike it. I actually like it quite a lot, but like out of the 5, it always, I don't know, if I were to rank something, it kind of goes at the bottom. And I think for me, a lot of it has to do with the color timing. Like it's for me, it's like the ugliest looking Craig movie. And I think that cinematographer is fantastic. Like all his other works that he's done, Interstellar, but it's just something about the way they colored it. You compare the set footage to what they did with it in post. Like it looks awful to me. And especially coming after Skyfall, which I think is like definitely in the top 3 best looking Bond movies of all time. The discrepancy there is really glaring, but like otherwise I do watch it a lot. It's just at the bottom of my Craig list, but it's definitely in the top half of the 25 movies for me. Moving on, Spectre saw the gun barrel return to the beginning for the first time since 2002's Die Another Day. I have issues with it, but should
the way
it
he
always
swings his arm showing the gun?
That's it exactly. It's like you finally gave us what we want, and then they didn't do it right. But do you think it should always be there at the front, or should Amazon experiment with it when we get Bond 26?
I am going to be very clear on this. It should be at the beginning of the film. That's it. I think putting it at the end, it destroys the point of it, because the point of it is to get your adrenaline up before the pre-title sequence. If it's not there, then what is it doing? And there's no question. It has to be at the beginning, and no, Amazon should not mess around with it.
Just to reinforce David's point, when they were doing extras for Die Another Day, David Arnold was talking about it, and he was talking about the thing about the gun barrel being at the start. For those 10 seconds, you think you're about to see the greatest James Bond film ever made. And, again, it gets up your adrenaline, and, particularly, and especially when there's a good arrangement of the gun barrel music. I'm hesitant. I can't really recall a bad one, but there are some that are better than others. So yeah, I'm inclined to leave it at the beginning. It depends. If you want to make clear that this is connected to the earlier series or earlier two series, if you want to be picky about it, you should have it at the start, because the thing was, they gave these excuses why they didn't have it in Skyfall, and
artistic excuses,
yeah, and it's just like it they didn't pass the smell test.
No, not at all. Casino Royale, absolutely. I'll back them on that. For Quantum of Solace and Skyfall, why? It made no sense at all, and it makes no sense having it at the end.
Well, after 3 movies of it being not at the beginning, now Spectre started the trend of having it, or restarted the trend of opening the film. So we're 2 for 2, and hopefully it continues to stay there. Spectre has a spectacular pre-title sequence that puts the spotlight on Mexico. And while Bond is shot there before, it was standing in for the fictional isthmus. Here, Mexico plays itself. Has the movie inspired any trips for you or desire to visit?
Yeah, I guess I'd love to visit Mexico. I just don't want to think about all the organizing that it would take. But yeah, sure, I would like to go there. I would like to visit many, many Bond locations. So from that point of view, yeah, I am inspired. But I'm inspired generally by Bond in that respect. It's just that my traveling days are kind of over to a large extent, because it's just too complicated to travel these days. We've got too many commitments at home, and so I very, very rarely travel.
I'm kind of in the same situation David is in that regard. I'd be very curious to go there. We should note, we'll talk more about this later, but something that came out from the Sony hacks was that they were getting these tax credits and from the Mexican government. And a lot of it had to do with how good Mexico looked in the movie. And there was like an exchange of memos between MGM, Sony, and Eon. And like they had already secured some, and like the MGM executive, like, we got to maximize those credits. And I have to admit, so I went into the movie with knowing that knowledge, because all this came out before the film came out. I did think that the last shot of the pre-titles, as it's getting ready to go into the titles, boy, whatever they gave up in tax credits, I guess, for that shot, because it did look rather spectacular, the Mexico City skyline.
Well, and we're in a different era than, like, say, License to Kill, because of social media. And I've seen since Spectre, like, a lot of Bond fans on Instagram, like, posting photos from their trips there. Certainly David Zaritsky has done, videos on his YouTube channel, The Bond Experience, showing off the locations. 007 Road to a Million Season 2 had an episode that was focused around it. And it's a place it's a part of Mexico that I've never been to. But like similar to what you've said, it's something that I would like to go to because it was in a Bond movie, and just, the family history. Like my dad was born in Mexico City before they moved to the US. So I like knowing that, there's a place in my family's past that was the spotlight of a Bond movie. And of all the Daniel Craig posters that I have, the only one that I currently have up and framed is that Spectre teaser poster with him in the Day of the Dead mask. So I like having that connection and seeing Mexico in a more positive light. 'Cause normally it isn't. And here we get the exoticness of the city. It definitely, along with like other things like a Coco or maybe Batman v Superman, showing off Day of the Dead and bringing some of that culture and adding to the travelogue aspect of Bond, which was such a big part of why I gravitated towards it as a kid, seeing these different locations that I've never been able to go to. The Craig series tends to really like Italy, and I don't blame them because there's been some spectacular locations. So it's nice that in this movie, we actually get to see a lot of different environments, starting with Mexico itself.
Now, I think the Mexico City sequence is fantastic. I love it. It's a great start to the movie. And there's something funny, though. My wife kept playing this song, and I was thinking, why do I know that song? Why do I know that song? Then it suddenly clicked. There's that sequence when Bond and Australia are going into the hotel, and Bond's dressed up as in the skull mask and all that kind of stuff. And there are just briefly you hear, I don't know, 2 or 3 songs while they're walking through the hotel to the lift to the elevator, and it's one of those, and you hear it for I don't know, like 2 or 3 seconds. Yeah, and that's it. And it was that song.
Wow.
And it wasn't the same version either. It was she was playing a version just on guitar by a Spanish artist, but it was the same song, La Llorona.
Nice. And since you brought it up, I want to talk about the music. A lot of criticism falls to the score and some reuse of Skyfall music and themes, which, I mean, there should be some, correlation, like having M's theme from Skyfall play when she shows up again. Like that should be there. That melody should repeat. But part of what had to do with it was the editing process and how they edited the film to Skyfall music, and it worked for the tempo they were using. So they just kind of had Newman repeat beats there. But, the writings on the wall won 007 his second Oscar in a row for Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures Original Song. So I was curious, how do you guys feel about Newman's score 10 years later? Would you want him to return? And what pressure did this put on Eon for a three-peat when it came to the next song? Having an Oscar-winning song. Does that pressure still exist for Amazon today? Like, we got to have another Oscar-winning song.
That's an interesting question.
When you ask about Newman, I think Newman is a very talented composer, but I don't think James Bond is in his wheelhouse. At the time, I compared his scores for the Bond movies to a man who's wearing clothes that don't quite fit. It's not super obvious, but it's just what made me think that was actually after Skyfall in early 2013, he did a movie directed by Steven Soderbergh called, I think it was called The Bitter Pill, but it was a drama. And it just seemed like, as I was watching the movie, it just seemed like, Newman is definitely more, that's where he shines. And then also in 2015, he also did the score for a Steven Spielberg movie, Bridge of Spies. This was it'd been a long time. Finally, there was a Steven Spielberg movie without a John Williams score, and Newman did it. And I thought it was a really great score. Again, it's a movie based on actual events, Cold War tensions and all that. And also specifically with the Spectre score, it just, it's like I've watched a lot of old TV shows where they don't have the money for an original score for every episode. And it reminded me of that, where the music itself is perfectly acceptable, but it's just I think I had a line when I wrote about Spectre, the review, that I said, Human reminded me more of a music supervisor going through the the music library than doing a lot of original stuff for the film. That might be a little unduly harsh, but I don't think so. It's like your example, Javi, about M's theme when we see Judi Dench on that video recording. That's perfectly satisfactory. But like, for example, in the helicopter sequence in the pre-titles, da 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 da, it's like lifted from Skyfall. It's
Yeah.
And I gather the reasons you mentioned, but it's it's like as an audience member, I don't really care about that. All I know is the effect it had on me, and it just seemed like with all the money you've thrown at this movie, you got to like lift the
that
score.
$245 million. Yeah.
Well, and remember too, it's more than that, but it's like it's 245 net after all the product placement and the tax credits get factored in, because again, going back to the Sony hacks, this MGM executive is sounding the alarm. They're going over 300 in terms of raw spending. And like, this could be one of the most expensive movies ever made, something that has since long been eclipsed, but still, anyway.
Yeah, I feel the same. I don't think he's the right composer for Bond. But having said that, I did think some of the music for the Dia de Muertos sequence was pretty good. It fitted the sequence well.
Yeah. No, I love that opening track, and how Craig emerges as Bond and walking on the rooftops like that. The way he uses the Bond theme there is really exceptional. And I think, David Arnold reused a lot of themes throughout his 3 Brosnan movies, but he would arrange them in a different way, unique to that movie. And that's not something that we got in Spectre, but I feel like it's not as much as we think looking back at it. Like, I feel listening to the soundtrack, like there's a lot more original music there than I think we give it credit for. And I certainly like the some of the chase music. Like, it could use a little more, Bond flavor, but at the same time, what excitement you can glean out of the Aston Martin chase or the airplane chase comes from the score itself, not what we're seeing on screen. And some of his location music, when we first see like the Hoffler Clinic, like I really like those cues as well. But how did you feel about Writings on the Wall? Like, I remember when it was dropped, it was at like some ungodly hour, like 3 a.m. where I live. And I specifically set my alarm, woke up, went down.
There's dedication for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was excited. And it's not every day you get a new Bond song, even more so now. And went downstairs, put on my headphones. It's 3 a.m. and the opening just is so epic. I love those opening notes. It feels like you're in a Bond movie.
If you were a real Bond fan, you would have blasted it out to the entire neighborhood.
But then you get, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds into the song and the falsetto hit, and it was so much. It was too much for 3 a.m. But I've softened on it. I really like the song a lot. And the parts that bother me don't bother me now. I think it was just too early for me to hear something that high pitched. But, going back to my earlier question, like, does this, having Skyfall, I feel like set a precedent and applied pressure, and now they've had 3 in a row. Like, where do they go from here? Like, are we going to be disappointed if the new song doesn't get a win or even a nomination?
Do you know what? I don't think so, because I think that since Casino Royale, Barbara Broccoli, especially more than Michael, I think she was going for awards whenever she could. The Casino Royale had the critical acclaim that had been lacking in Bond films, and she got that. And so I think that she was kind of really pushing for awards and trying to elevate the Bond films in any respect that she could. So with Amazon, I don't think that pressure is going to be there for them. They're not really going to care so much about that because it's essentially it's gone from a family business to a corporate business, and they're not going to have the same kind of dreams for the franchise.
Yeah, it's not about the prestige, it's about the profit.
To a certain extent, all they really want to do is for the wheels to turn and for the film to get out there. But I don't think they're going to care much at all about whether songs win Oscars or anything like that.
Bill, any final thoughts on the theme song itself?
It was okay. It was funny. I had an exchange on Facebook. Somebody, a Bond fan that I know through Facebook, really, really didn't like it. And he was going, whose perspective is this song from? I said, it's from James Bond's perspective. Listen to the lyrics. It's like, but there's a falsetto. I said, well, I can't help that. But it's like very clearly the song itself is from Bond's point of view.
Yeah, it's Bond when his trousers are too tight.
I have seen that critique as well. Like, oh, this isn't a Bond song. And it's like, but it's in a Bond movie. It's the main title theme. It's a Bond song. Whether or not you like it is, that's your business. But, I don't care for All Time High, but it's still a Bond song. Whether I feel it's appropriate or not, or, Die Another Day takes some really big departures, but it's still a James Bond theme, whether we like it or not. So whether or not you like it has nothing to do with what it is, which is a Bond song. So I think we're going to put a pin in this conversation and pick this up next week. Anything you guys want to promote as we sign off for today?
It's been kind of quiet for me. It's nothing in particular to promote.
Okay, well, if you are just waiting for Bond 26 news, then head over to my website and sign up for the mailing list is what I'm going to say.
Excellent. And of course, make sure that you follow us on YouTube as well for the 007 Files channel, where we post the audio editions of episodes and have some video content as well. And also be on the lookout for the James Bond Lover's Guide to Britain. We have an excellent interview with author Edward Biddulph, and we'll have a written review on David's site as well. So thank you for listening. We will continue this conversation next week. Until then, the 007 Files will return.